Body. So welcome along to our annual plan workshop. So just a reminder, this is live streamed. So what we'll do is we've got Councillor Donovan and Councillor Fields online. I think they're online. Cool. So just you'll let them, if they got questions, they'll be able to just let us know, which is great. And we'll go through firstly into my favourite subject, rates capping. So well, hand over to you and you tell us the good news, Bede.
Well, Sam, sorry, just an apology for an early departure from me as well.
Oh, yep, good as gold.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and tēnā koutou katoa, Mayor and Councillors. So Monday, a week ago, the government announced its proposals around rates capping, which had been signalled in various forms for some time. What we're presenting here, and it's Mitchell Shaw, who's done a lot of the work with the support of Bruce, our Head of Finance. What we're presenting here is some modelling that has been done to bring to attention the implications and some of the numbers around it. So with that, I'll hand over to them to walk us through the presentation.
Good morning, councillors.
Good morning.
Bring it this slide. Lost batteries. There we go. All right. So today we will run you through rates capping. We'll start with a brief background on where rates capping and its current iteration has come from. We'll then move to the actual announcement that was made on the 1st of December. At that point, we'd like to stop for questions on those sections. We will then move into some worked examples on the impacts of rates capping on council's finances, other key considerations, at which point we'd like to stop for questions again on those sections, and we will then move into the submission process, considerations, and the next steps for council. So, the background to rates capping. Over the last few years, the government has made several mentions to a cost of living crisis and the pressure on households. In August 2024, the Minister for Local Government released a statement around back to basics for local government. The key points in that statement were that council rates were increasing by around 15% on average across the country, which was more than 4 times the rate of inflation. They also made mention that they wanted councils to be doing everything they could to reduce pressure on ratepayers. They also mentioned as part of that document that they would be looking at options around capping revenue to councils to protect ratepayers and control expenditure on pet projects and nice-to-haves. Around a year later, in July 2025, the Minister for Local Government issued the Local Government Systems Improvement Amendment Bill. While this was initially marketed as a rates capping bill, there was no rates capping within it. However, it did refocus the council on core services to respond directly to public frustration over deteriorating infrastructure, rising rates, and a lack of financial focus. They also mentioned in their media release that they were working at pace on a rates cap model. Within the bill itself, while there was no explicit provisions on rates capping, within the explanatory notes they did make mention that they were reviewing rates capping systems, potentially in line with the New South Wales rates peg model. It's also worth noting that around this time the Reserve Bank issued a media release stating that around the impact that rates were having on increases to CPI. On the 31st of July 2025, the Minister for Local Government issued another statement around stronger accountability for rates. They released metrics on councils on their financial measures and once again called for getting back to basics and the delivering of essential services and infrastructure, and once again pointed out that they were exploring a rates capping system. So over the last year, there's been a theme out of central government when discussing the rates cap, which is that the rates caps are not discussed individually. They're always a part of larger government reform and policy. There's been a push to get councils to focus on core service delivery and back to basics, and they would like to use a control on rates to help limit the cost of living. So come the 1st of December 2025 at 4 p.m, the government officially announced its rates capping policy. The key components of that rates cap are a 2 to 4 increase limit on rates per year. The rates cap would exclude water charges and water targeted rates and other non-rates revenue. From 1 July 2027, so our next LTP, councils would be required to consider the impact of the rates cap, a transition phase. The rates cap would take effect from 1 July 2029, so FY30, and exceptions could be applied for in exceptional circumstances. The definition that they've used for exceptional circumstances is global financial crisis and significant natural disaster. So out of that announcement, council staff have had a number of questions where there's lack of clarity within the documentation provided. The first key one is the rates cap a nominal rates cap increase or an increase to existing ratepayers? When we present our rates increase numbers, we typically release them as an increase to existing ratepayers, the amount the ratepayer could expect to see increasing on their bill itself if they stayed within the same property. So for example, the 2025-26 annual plan had an increase to existing ratepayers of 6.6%. A nominal rates increase, on the other hand, is the increase in the total, percentage increase on the total revenue that council collects from rates, so a purely numeric example. And for the 25-26 annual plan, that was an 8.52% increase. It effectively strips out the effect of growth. Our initial view is that the rates cap is a nominal rates cap rather than allowing for growth on top of it. The basis for that is the wording calculations that they have provided. The upper band of 4% is on the basis of allowing for growth.
So just so I've got it clear in my very simple mind, the difference between the 6.6 and the 8.52 is just growth.
Correct.
Yeah, cool.
Next key questions that we have on the announcement is the rates cap on each individual rate charged by council or on the total revenue collected by council rates? So the council has a number of different targeted rates and general rates. Each of them capped to 4%, or is it just the total revenue collected from all rates that's capped to 4%? Our initial view is that it will be based on the overall rates revenue take, given the complexity around enforcing it on a rate-by-rate basis and the limitations that would place on councils when setting up new rates in the future. What does the transition phase mean, and how strictly will that period be enforced? In the announcement that was made, the Prime Minister and Local Government Minister talked about the need for councils to observe the transition period, and that councils who didn't could be subject to commissioners. Our belief is that we will need to show in our upcoming LTP an approach to getting our rates down to 4%, and they wouldn't be expecting to see significant rates increases in that period over and above the rates cap. Is the rates cap based on the prior annual plan or LTP budget or on the previous actual strike? As many of you will know, we often have a small rates over strike each year due to late growth in the rating base. It's unclear at this stage whether the rates cap would be applied on that number or a previous budgeted figure. If there were to be part mergers from the regional council or other district councils, how would the rates base be assessed for rates capping? and what would qualify as a reason for a temporary adjustment post 1 July 2029. At the moment, they've only said exceptional circumstances, however, they haven't defined how that will be determined in this situation. So if there are some questions, we'd be happy to take them.
Hey, thank you for that, and it's a really good explanation of how it sort of works through, and I guess our initial view on it. So there'll be more that comes through later. So I really appreciate the work, and it's good we can do it here so that the public watching can see as well. I've got Tyler, Victoria, and then Yanni.
Kia ora, guys. I just wanted to get some clarity around the way this is modelled, and there's multiple indices which we use to assess what the inflation looks like, which is a mix of GDP, general inflation, but the one that stands out for me is the construction cost index. Do we take into account any of that, and is that different to the general inflation that the rates cap is talking about?
So when we build our budgets for the LTP and annual plan, we apply an inflation index to the numbers to bring it up to current valuations. We use Burl's numbers to produce that inflation index, which is weighted according to the activities that our council actually undertakes. The Burl index is largely built off the producer price index and other known costs and indices that are available for local government costs. The rates cap that has been built by central government uses an underlying assumption based on CPI inflation instead, which is the consumer price index, so a basket of goods that a typical household would purchase rather than a business.
So the CPI doesn't actually correlate very well with our Burl index?
It is not a fully equivalent measure.
No. And do you know the difference in percentage between those two?
Not off the top of my head, sorry, Councillor.
Okay, would we be able to get some information for that? I think that'd be really valuable for public knowledge to understand exactly what that looks like. And the next quick question I've got is related to that rates cap and what we're looking towards 2027. We're obviously going to be taking water away from that. Do we know the current rates take from water in the capital program and even in OPEX?
Yes, we do, Councillor.
What's the percentage?
It's around 40 to 50% each year.
Oh, wow. Okay. And from the wider rates percentage, so for example, we've got looking at 8% for the 2026 year, we're not going to be separating water between now and then, right?
No, that is correct, Councillor.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, did you say 40 to 50? Can you just talk me through that a bit more?
So, of our total rates that the council collects, 40 to 50% each year is applied to the water services, either direct operational expenditure, the rating for renewals of the capital program, or the debt repayment and interest expense that has been incurred as a result of borrowing on behalf of the capital program for water services.
Again, in my simple mind, how does that translate? And so, if you've got an 8% rate increase, how does this? What does that look like in terms of the water? And you may not know today, but what does that look like in terms of if you took out the water, what does that look like as a general rate?
We will the modelling that we're upcoming to shows the results excluding water and the savings that would need to be provided.
Good as gold. Thank you. I've got Victoria.
Thank you. So as a sort of follow-on from Councillor McDonald there and the information you've given us in initial questions, you talk about our staff initial view on various questions, including the water. When are you expecting further clarification from the government on that to give us a little bit more certainty about what this looks like for us?
So the government is currently carrying out a consultation process to receive feedback on their document. We've also been provided a contact with the DIA to follow up with on any questions. So we're building up a full set of questions.
And have you had any feedback on your interpretation to date?
No, not to date.
And do you expect to get any feedback on your interpretation to date, or are you going to have to wait until this full feedback loop is completed?
I cannot speak for the DIA.
Yeah, thank you. It's great that you recognise that they did say there was an allowance for natural disaster. Obviously, Christchurch has had several, but most prominent is the earthquakes, which we're still having to recover from. Can you just clarify around any discussions with central government about whether we would be able to have any exemption based on the natural disasters that we've had historically that we're still paying for?
The initial release by the government when the Prime Minister and Minister for Local Government spoke to the rates capping, while the Christchurch example was not brought up, the recent flooding up north was discussed, and the Prime Minister's comments were that the council was expected to operate within the 2 to 4% cap. So it would likely be only for future natural disasters that the cap may be adjusted.
Right. And thank you for the really good explanation around the cost of the water services. Are we able to get the same figures for the earthquake infrastructure repairs that we're still paying for? Like, do we know how much of the current budget is going towards fixing the broken infrastructure and earthquake recovery costs?
That may be a little difficult to determine just due to identifying whether a project was exclusively for the earthquake or only partially as a result of the earthquake, and splitting those costs may be difficult to determine at this stage.
But if we could just do the anchor projects
I
and
think
work
the
out.
answer is no. So you got a different question? Because I've got Tyrone next.
We can't work out any earthquake related costs that we've got currently.
That's what they're telling us.
You could work out some
We could work out the anchor projects.
Sure, but they wouldn't help this exercise.
Okay, well, what about just take Te Kaha? What percentage of that is of the rates?
There's potentially two parts to that question, in that there is part that those projects contribute to a rates increase versus how much of our total rates collection they contribute to. So for the Christchurch earthquake, for example, you are not likely to be experiencing rates increases at the moment as a result of them. And likewise, while this year there is a rates impact of Te Kaha, that will decrease moving forward in terms of its pressure on increasing rates.
Okay, Tyrone.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm still a little bit unclear on the definitions around nice to haves and pet projects. Do we have a list of what they are, or is that a rhetorical device? I'm just not clear on that.
In terms of the nice to haves, we don't have a definition. What we do have is the Local Government Systems Improvement Bill, which defined core services, which included network infrastructure, so water services and transport, parks, recreational facilities, libraries, and there were a couple of others who escape me at the moment. Economic development.
Okay, it's still a bit woolly, but thank you.
Cool. Aaron.
Yeah, so how soon can we separate water out?
So we
separate it out and start charging for water properly and separately, and because that's the model we're moving to. So do we have to wait until the last minute and do it then, or can we go early and?
So,
around volumetric chargings, probably we can get some advice from the water team at some later date.
Well, that's only the fresh water, but I'm picking once water's separated out, it's all three go, or do only one go?
so the waters reform separation is currently underway. By 30 June 2028, we are required to have a financially sustainable and ring-fenced water service delivery. Because water services were retained in-house, there is no requirement for council to move to a volumetric charging. However, it may do so if it chooses to. In terms of the separation of waters. We're currently undertaking that work to get it ring fenced and ensure it's completely separate from the rest of our finances. And our rating for water at the moment is primarily collected through Three Waters targeted rates, with the debt repayment portion of our water services still included within the general rate.
So you're saying that by 2028 we have to be doing it separately?
Yes, it has to be ring fenced within our
Okay,
financial.
and I still haven't had my question answered, as given that water is a utility like electricity, gas, so on and so forth, can it be charged any other way than volumetrically?
Yes,
How?
it can be done on fixed charges, it can be done volumetrically, hourly basis. There's a number of different measures that the council could decide.
So then why is every other industry regulated to not be allowed to do that? Like, you can't just say, oh, electricity tiana are allowed to charge whatever they want because you're in the middle of nowhere, so we'll just ramp it because we can. You can't. There's limits to.
So we could come back with a discussion about that. I forgot that actually Mitch is our expert on water, charging down the end because he was in the water transfer team and finance team. But if we can concentrate on rating today and then come back about these issues at the next workshop.
Okay. Do we know if the government's addressed that, or they've just?
No, the Commerce Commission will be.
Because we are an outlier, obviously.
The Commerce Commission will be sitting in over all water service delivery across the country, and will be carrying out a review on how water charges have to be implemented.
Right. Okay.
Okay, cool. Tim?
Thank you. How much feedback will they be asking from us with regards to the rates capping system? Because at the moment it seems they've only mentioned the New South Wales, but like Scottish Water, when the DIA came to us about Three Waters and used Scottish Water as the example to follow, which was ridiculous because they gave us no negative sides or risks, etc. It was pretty one-sided and done deal. Do we have a say? Because New South Wales, if you look at it, they have a different government system and they do have a large natural resource that they can feed off. So I'm just wondering, is it seen by you guys that they will be asking or giving us options to put up systems?
Yeah, we'll probably cover that later on in the submissions part of the session about what the government is asking us to respond to and what we will say.
Okay, thank you.
Just quickly, guys, I just probably wasn't clear, but I'm wondering if we were able to publicise, when you're ready, the difference between burial and CPI. It'd be really good to sort of publicise that and actually make that front-facing in terms of the struggles that obviously the council's going to have to be working through towards going into 2028.
Yep.
So just, looking at, for this year, we've got our inflation rate at 2.9 that we build in for the burial, and Te Kaha at 1.2, that takes us to 4.1. So without Te Kaha, we're sitting within the range. Is that the intention, actually, just saying to councils, you can only increase your rates by inflation, really? That's what you see as the intention?
I cannot speak to the intention of the central government.
Well, I suppose. Damn, I thought you might have been the one. Where I'm going with this is it's really not providing any scope for growth, and therefore we really need to really check our DC charges that they are adequate for enabling us to enable that growth to occur. Otherwise there's nothing left in the pot to do that. And yet at the same time we're being told to provide all this land for housing, 65,000 houses, and no ability to do it. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just flagging that really. It's more of a statement.
Yeah.
Well, I did ask a question that he couldn't
That's
answer.
right. No. I was just going to say the super city will fix it. Don't worry. There'll be a super city. Okay, do you want to jump through to the next bit?
Right, so we'll move on to the rates cap modelling. So this is a look at the impact of the rates cap on the council's financials. So quick disclaimer and the modelling assumptions that we've used for the slides that you're about to see. We've based it on the best information that we have currently available. It could potentially be changed or require update if there are any further central government legislation or policy updates. The underlying numbers that have been used are the 26-27 current build of the annual plan, which is our initial base build plus the CapEx deliverability review. So the around 8.5% you've seen previously, which results in a nominal rates increase of 9.6%. The rates cap is based on the previous year's budgets each time. The rates collected for water services have been excluded, and the council's credit rating and interest rates are not impacted by the imposition of a rates cap, which we'll come back to later. So in terms of a rates cap, we've got 4 scenarios that we've put up here. So the first scenario is a 4% cap commencing from FY30, which is the year that the rates cap is fully implemented in the government announcement. That would require a reduction in rates of $28.8 million in FY30, increasing to $62.2 million by 34. It's worth noting these numbers are cumulative. If the saving of $28.8 million was achieved in FY30, the year following, and that saving was permanent, the year following would be reduced by that $28 million. The 4% rates cap from FY27-28, so that would be our next long-term plan. If that was implemented, that would give that would be essentially, if the government required the transition period to have the full cap. It requires in FY28 a $28 million reduction in our rates collection, increasing to $122 million by 2034. The next scenario is a 4% rates cap phased in across the transition period, where our LTP slowly reduces to the 4% rates cap at a 6% cap, followed by a 5% cap, down to a 4% cap. In FY28, that would require an $18 million reduction in rates, increasing to $103 million by 2034. And then finally a 2% cap, so the bottom end of the cap that we've been provided from 27-28, which in FY28 would require savings of $37.9 million, increasing to $205.6 million. So between the 4% cap in 29-30 versus the 4% cap in 27-28, the delay of 2 years in the cap results in $60.2 million of rates being able to be collected between the two options, or the 4% cap from 28 compared to the 2% cap in 28, which would result in an additional $83.2 million reduction in our rates. So this is the previous slide graphed out. The black line there is our current projection of rates for non-water services with each of the individual models below. So as we move forward into the modelling, we will be primarily focusing in on the blue line, the phased entry, so the 654 rates reduction. So the key takeaways from here is that the lower the rates cap, the less the council is able to fund itself for our rates. At the moment, rates make up around 52% of the council's total funding. A 4% cap commencing in 27-28, by 2030, council rates would need to reduce by 12.6% from the current forecast, compared to a 2% cap commencing in that same year, where rates would need to reduce by 17.5%. The cumulative impact of the rates cap is significant and reduces the amount that can be collected over time. A 4% rates cap commencing in 27-28 would require rate savings of $28 million. To put that $28 million into perspective, in 2028, the net operational budget for recreation and sports is $28.4 million. And by 2034, a rate saving of $122.4 million would be required. That $22.4 million is the equivalent of the entire net operational budget for our communities and citizens' activities. So that's rec and sport, libraries, the arts centre, our service centres and the likes. The timing and implementation of the rates cap is significant. A 4% cap commencing in 27-28 is able to rate $60.2 million less in 2034 than one commencing 2 years later. That's $60.2 million, to put it once again into perspective. The parks budget in 2034, the net operational parks budget is $53.7 million. And cost reductions or other funding sources will be required to achieve a rates cap, and temporary savings will not address the rates cap. They need to be permanently baked in, otherwise you will be chasing the saving each year following. So how could council address a rates cap at a high level? Reducing operational expenditure or increasing fees and charges would reduce rates at a dollar for dollar basis. So an $18 million reduction in operational expenditure would result in an $18 million reduction in the rates requirement of council. So applying our same transition phase entry for the rates cap in year one, or 27-28, the year of the LTP, $18 million of savings would need to be found, increasing to $64.1 million by the time of the rates cap being fully implemented. And to put that $64.1 million into context, the libraries and rec and sport combined net operational budget is $66 million for that year. If the rates shortfall was to be exclusively addressed by increasing fees and charges, or unrestricted fees and charges, I should say, so the fees and charges that aren't set by central government or other regulatory bodies or aren't cost recovery activities, then the revenue on those items would need to increase by around 40%, which would likely impact the demand for those activities. So how does addressing rates capping by our operational budgets or fees and charges impact our key measures? From the nominal rates increase, you can see it decreases to the cap over time. Our balanced budget is largely unaffected as operational expense or revenue is being increased or reduced at the same rate rates are. However, our projected debt headroom does deteriorate due to the reduction in our overall revenue. So council is able to borrow based on its revenue earning potential at $2.80 for every $1 of revenue the council has. So a rates cap reduces our ability to borrow. If we were to address the rates cap via CapEx, it would not be possible. By 2034, we would require a negative capital program. So there would have to be some combination of CapEx and OpEx to address the rates cap. So the scenario you're seeing there is if rates were capped to $300 million, the capital program was capped on non-waters was capped to $300 million in all years. In the 27-28 year, that would require a $125.3 million reduction. To put that into perspective, that is the entire citizens and communities capital program, so libraries and rec and sport, plus the parks capital program would only come to $121.3 million. And by 2030, the reduction and the capital program would need to be $174.2 million, which is the equivalent of the transport capital program once the NZTA funding is removed. On top of that reduction, there would still need to be $36 million of operational savings identified, which is the equivalent of the library's budget for that year. In terms of how does using CapEx to address the rates cap impact our key financial benchmarks, over time we would come into line with the rates cap. Our balanced budget would be largely unaffected. However, our projected debt headroom would improve due to the reduction in the amount of borrowing that Council is undertaking, offsetting the loss of revenue. So the next option, you've probably been thinking, well, you've said we've got a healthy debt headroom, why can't we increase our borrowing or reduce ratings for renewals to address this? The answer is that will cost the ratepayer more in the long run, and when we come to the measures, you'll also see it there. So initially, in the first year, if rating for renewals was reduced, Council would have to reduce them by $18.4 million compared to operational expenditure of a reduction of only $18 million. So that additional decrease in the rating for renewals or increasing borrowing is due to having to repay that debt and the additional interest expense that the council would incur due to increasing its debts. While in the first year it's only a $400,000 difference, by 2034 the council will have to increase its borrowing by $42.2 million over what it would have to find in operational savings. In addition, that increase in debt repayment and interest expense leaves less money left over in a rates capping scenario for existing services or core activities, meaning further savings would have to be identified. In terms of how that impacts our key budgets, our key benchmarks and metrics, while we would meet the nominal rates cap, you can see there the council would lose its balanced budget for the remainder of the LTP period and would struggle to return. Our projected debt headroom would also significantly deteriorate, limiting our ability to respond to natural disasters or significant events in the future. So some other key considerations that we need to consider when it comes to rates capping is the impact on the council's credit rating. Historically, councils have had stronger credit ratings and therefore lower interest rates due to their ability to increase rates as required to address expenditure or historic deficits or debt servicing requirements. With a rates cap, that will no longer be the case. If the council's credit rating were to be downgraded by 1 point, interest rates would increase by 0.05%, which would result in additional interest costs, which in a rates capping scenario would then result in additional savings having to be found in core services or activities. The council currently has a strategy to increase its rating for renewals to 100% by 2032. Those increases are more than 4% each year to achieve that target. This will put pressure on council to reduce rating for renewals. However, that will lead to additional interest expense and debt repayment costs, which will result in further savings having to be identified in core council services and activities. There's also the effect on the current annual plan, or the result of the current annual plan, how it affects us into the rates cap. If the council were to adopt an annual plan with a 6.5% rates cap, we would versus a 8.51%, our current position, that would decrease the council's ability to rate over time. So while in 27-28 that would reduce the amount of rates that the council could collect by $1 million, by 2034, that would decrease it to by 5.9 million due to the cumulative effect of the rates cap on the lower base rates. It's also worth noting that the council collects GST on rates and development contributions which are passed to central government. Some view this as a tax on a tax. In 2025-26, ratepayers will pay approximately $124.1 million of GST on the council portion of their rates invoice issued by Christchurch City Council, and developers will pay $3.4 million in GST on their development contributions. There is the question that if council was able to keep the GST on its rates and development contributions, would we still be able to claim the input credit on our expenditure, such as the capital program and our ongoing operational expenditure, which in some years may exceed the amount that we collect collect on our rates invoices. And if ratepayers were not charged GST, only residential ratepayers would benefit, as businesses are able to claim the GST on the rates that they pay. So we'll stop for questions if you have any on the modelling.
Excellent, thank you. That was again really good and really clear. I've got Nathaniel and then Tyrone, and then
just a lot of the in-depth projections that you've got, we're looking at that 4% expected. I'm just wondering, if we go back to that slide where you had the 4% and also the 2% at the bottom there, if we get in the target band for inflation over the next few years, we could be looking at 2% inflation. So, just want to say hypothetically, if we were in that 2% with the $200 million hole in the budget by 2034, if we, in that year, 2034, if we closed all the libraries, all the parks, all of the art gallery, all the swimming pools, we would still be a good sort of 50 million away from filling that hole, wouldn't we?
I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but you are correct. The lower the rates cap over time, the additional savings that would need to be found to address it.
Okay, thank you.
Tyrone.
Oh, thanks, Sam. So, do we have a sense of just thinking in terms of non-residential building work put in place in Christchurch? Do we have a sense of the proportion of Canterbury's spend in that sector that Christchurch City Council builds? I know you won't have that number off the top of your head, but is that information that we can find out?
Can you say that again? I don't get that. Yeah.
So in terms of the building work put in place in the Canterbury region in any given year, so non-residential, so buildings that we might build that built by council. Do we have a sense of what proportion of that council does compared to the whole of the Canterbury region? So how much of a player in that space are we actually? What's the volume that we physically build? So not horizontal stuff, not anything in the ground, but just buildings above the ground that we finance.
David's looking at me saying consenting numbers, so I don't know if that helps. Yeah.
We could probably work it out, I suppose. I just was just wondering if there was a sort of a, it doesn't
He's
matter.
right, the mechanism.
I was almost not going to ask that question, but yeah, anyway.
Cool.
I can probably figure it out. All right, thanks.
Aaron.
It's interesting to put up examples of closing libraries, swimming pools and all those, but none of them compare to digital, and that's the biggest in the room, and we didn't put that up as an example of something we can carve into. Why is that?
The examples that were provided were not suggested cuts, they were just budgets that were close to the equivalent level of savings required. To put it into context, when we start talking in the millions, it can become a little abstract, and having something more tangible that people can see is a better example.
Right, and isn't the idea of the rates cap being put on councils, the entire purpose of this is we're rating beyond the rate of inflation, double, triple, year on year on year. That's compounding. The purpose of this is to get councils to start spending their money on what they can afford. So Toyotas instead of Ferraris, for instance. I mean, they're both a car, but they're quite different. And like South Library's a Ferrari. The 10 Shirley Road's barely a Toyota. I'm not picking on that one,
No,
but
I suppose we just
it's a $32 million public facility. We can't keep spending like that. It's overspent beyond its purpose.
We just go to the policy back at the beginning that was set out by Mitchell as to what's driving it, and all we're doing here is trying to contextualise what some of those numbers mean in terms of activities that are used by
Okay, but
residents and
when do
ratepayers
we put the magnifying glass on ourselves and go, okay, the commercial space is being built in Christchurch, the dearest are built by the council, and then hospitals per square metre are cheaper than facilities we build. Something's wrong, and that's what we should be addressing.
What's that?
What's that? No, hospitals are cheaper than the library. Yes, they were.
Okay, so
100%. I'll give you the numbers.
So let's not debate. We're doing so well.
No, but Sam, I
We're gonna
want
do that.
examples of how we're going to get there.
We're going to do that in the next
Not-
session.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
cool.
Yep.
Thank
Yep.
you. No, thank you.
Cool.
Sorry.
Mark? I've
Thank
got
you.
Mark, Yanni, Tim, Tyler, Kelly.
You mentioned there about the GST on rates and the likes. Have we done any work around Crown properties, if they were to pay rates on their properties, how that would add into this equation?
We don't have those numbers available at the moment. We should have an updated set shortly on that information.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, we just opened Parakuri today. Effectively, within a couple of years, 2 years, we'd be looking at mothballing it to meet the rates cap. Is that kind of the takeaway?
The numbers that we provided are not suggested savings. They were just to contextualise the quantum of the saving that needs to be found.
Right, but the irony of the government coming down and talking about how wonderful this facility is, if the rates cap comes in, we'll effectively have to, I mean...
Is this a question?
Yeah, the question is, like, just from what I've heard you, to put it into context, it seems inevitable we would have to close some facilities. But I just cannot see what other way in terms of the operational budget could we achieve the rates cap.
It's through you, Mr. Chair. No, we're not suggesting anything of that kind at all. All we're doing is saying, here, as Mitchell said, by the time you start talking in these numbers, it becomes a bit abstract. We're just trying
Right.
to say, here's a service that people can understand what's delivered day to day. This is
I
what it costs, and that's all we're doing.
like-
We're not making any
So
suggestion.
Sure.
at
I mean,
all.
I
just to
understand
be clear,
that,
this
but-
is so you have the information to inform the submission that we will be putting into central government in response to this.
Yeah, thank you.
Your hard decisions will be in your LTP next
Sure.
year. That's where a lot, initially annual plan, but the big decisions will be in the LTP.
Just to understand, I guess what I'm just struggling to understand a little bit is there'll be things that we have control over that we can not do. We might not like not doing them, but there'll be things that we can make choices on. But there will also be things that we have to do as basic services, right? Like, I presume we'd have to continue consenting. We couldn't just say the operational cost of consenting, we're just not doing it.
Can we
Dog.
sorry, I've let that go. Can we not get really into the weeds right now? We'll keep moving through. And then,
Sorry, what I was trying to understand at a high level
Yep.
is in terms of the things that, are there things that we have to do in terms of and what the cost is versus things that we have optionality around?
So what the team have tried, and I think they've said time and time again, they're just giving you contextual information about areas that are funded by rates. So some of those other areas are cost recovery
Right.
exercises. So we haven't gone into that depth. We can come back.
Sure.
We've got another presentation next
Okay.
week, and we will in the new year.
perfect. Tim?
Thank you. It'd be good in our submission to ask what they're looking at, because they have mentioned an example of just mentioning New South Wales. So New South Wales and Queensland do if you go to the pools there, etc., they are pretty close to user pays. They're gyms, etc. You're paying serious money to go to gyms, etc. So it would be good for our ratepayers to know if that were the case, and that's what we're looking. What would a pool visit cost, and what would a gym membership cost?
Tim, I think on that one, to get your point, we talked before, and I think Andrew Rutledge and the team talked about is the price elasticity. So the more they go up, the less money we get into it actually costs.
Yeah, I realise that, but I do think it's important to have the actual fact of what the subsidy that we are supplying, because if you look at the pools, for instance, nationally there's a learn to swim, because we are a series of islands and rivers, so drowning is an issue. So is that going to be a core
There's
service?
quite a good, maybe what we could do is get circulated the paper, because that's a really good one which says you've got all these fixed costs across your libraries and your pools. The objective is to get as many people through the door as possible. If you take it too high, you'll start eating away and then losing money on your fixed costs as well.
The difference between libraries and pools, for instance, libraries have 3D printers and overlockers. What is great for social value and societal, but what's the government? What should we be asking them? What we are allowed to provide for our communities?
Okay. Yeah. All right, Tyler.
Additionally, that's our interpretation of that, though, isn't it? Because you could argue that overlocker actually can benefit economic development eventually if someone needs to sew on that. So that's our interpretation.
Swimming will save your life.
Okay, cool. So let's go to Tyler.
Hey guys, just want to bring it back a bit more high level now.
Hang on, guys. Can we just one person at a time?
Yeah, I just want to bring it back a bit more high level now. So it was good that you elaborated and talked about the cuts within sports and rec, what that would look like. I do want to note the non-core services which the government has sort of talked about, and that includes economic development, events, arts and culture, community development like pools, sports and rec, some environmental programs depending on what it is, and corporate and back office stuff. So the question I've got is actually, it may come up in the submission, is has there been any direction from the government around them backfilling some of those non-core services and taking those in?
No, there's been no direction to date. The rates capping documentation that we have received to date makes no reference to core or non-core services.
Okay, so that's a completely different policy matter when we're referring to the rates cap.
I wouldn't say it's a completely separate matter. The central government in previous releases has talked about rates capping in the context of back to basics and core services. It's just in the current documentation that we've received on rates capping, there has been no mention of core or non-core services.
Okay, I'll wait for the submissions part. Thank you.
It's a good point, Tyler, and I think I was just asking Mary, I'm sure we did a submission, might have been earlier this year, around saying, hey, if you don't want us to do this stuff, that's fine, or if you that's fine, but you do it and you pay for it. Yeah. So, and that's your point, isn't it? So, yep, cool. Okay, Kelly.
Thanks, Mitch. Just in terms of that table up there, so just trying to understand it. So if we reduce CapEx by 18 million a year,
so that's OPEX there.
No, OPEX, sorry. I always say that for some reason. So essentially, if we reduce OPEX by $18 million in that first year and bake those savings in, we'll be in. So essentially, we'll be sweet, right?
In that first year, yes, that would reduce the requirement in that second year, which is 33 million, down by 18 million. There would still be that additional rates to collect.
So we'd have to find another 18 as well.
Correct.
Okay, different from the first 18.
Another 15 million.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, no, that's good. Now I really understand.
All right. Do you want to? So anyone got anything else on that? I think we're good. So do you want to keep moving?
I will invite Tom up to run through the submission process and key facts around that.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm going to change tack slightly and talk about the consultation and submission on this that the government is running. So consultation is open until the 4th of February. The consultation is targeted, so this is not a public consultation. The public don't get an opportunity on the current consultation to submit to the government. Also, the stakeholders that are being asked to submit are, as I understand, relatively limited. There is also, just to note, there is limited information available for us to engage with at this stage. So we know that an independent reference group of 5 people led by economist Cameron Baggery advised the government on this rates cap policy, but we have nearly no analysis from this group that's been released publicly. There's also no discussion document, no policy paper, no draft legislation. So we haven't actually seen any of the working that has gone into the policy or what the other options are that the government have considered. What we are working with is essentially a 1.5 page summary and a press conference. So for a policy with such significant implications for councils and ratepayers across the country, this is, I think, quite disappointing. The lack of information and analysis does make it hard for us to do our analysis that they're asking us to give feedback on in this consultation. So what is it that they are asking us to consider in this consultation? It's quite a narrow scope of consultation questions. There are 5 questions that essentially focus on whether we agree with the methodology that they've used to determine the rates cap and what we think the impact of the policy might be. And I'll talk about these consultation questions in a moment. Just to go over the key points of the policy that the government are asking about in their consultation. So obviously we know that the target range for the rates increase is 2 to 4%. The Minister says this balances affordability for ratepayers while ensuring councils can maintain services and afford expansion. So how did the government come up with this? The minimum of 2% is based on the midpoint of the Reserve Bank's inflation target. So that inflation target is 1 to 3%. And this, as we've discussed, is a CPI-based measure. As we know, CPI measures general inflations using a basket of goods for households. So this includes everything like fruit and veggies, meat, drinks, alcohol, cigarettes, accommodation, and council rates. The government considers that the 2% figure is enough to maintain council standards and is a good long-run guide for sustainable council revenue growth. In terms of the maximum of 4%, this is the top end range is to allow to manage growth over the long term. The government considers that demand for council services aligns with rises in GDP. So the assumption is that as national GDP grows, the demand for council services grow at roughly the same rate. The government has said that nominal GDP grows at about 5.4% per annum on average. So when you take that number and then you account for an increase in the number of ratepayers through growth, which they have used an equation using proxies to work that out to do with population levels, household formations and new dwellings, this takes away about 1 to 1.5% of per year off that GDP figure. And then also when you take away productivity gains from this figure as well, which is about 0.3%, you end up with roughly 4% to manage growth. And that is how they have come to the maximum end of the band. So the consultation questions, as I said, there are 5 questions that the consultation is asking us to respond to. I'll run through each of the 5 questions and what a proposed response could be. But at the end of the presentation, if you have any feedback on these responses, that would be useful for drafting the submission. So question 1 is, do you agree with the proposed economic indicators to be included in a formula for setting a rates target? So we have some concerns with the methodology that is being used. For example, using CPI as a measure for council inflation. The CPI, or basket of goods approach, is not the best reflection for council costs and inflation. We pay for things like construction, digging up roads, laying pipes, building facilities, whereas the CPI measures average household consumer prices. We think that the band of 2 to 4% won't always account for changes or increases in inflation that might happen. The government has said that once implemented, the target range will be reviewed every 3 years. We wonder if this is adequate enough through periods of high inflation. Also, using national GDP as a proxy for council growth is quite an assumption to make. Every council is different. Some councils are rural, some are urban, some are growing fast, others are not growing at all. So using an average of the national nominal GDP growth is unlikely to reflect these differences and is a rather blunt measure that might not be accurate for some cities or districts. So it is an assumption to say that demand for council's services aligns like for like with GDP. GDP growth is also estimated on average to be 5.4%. It's not clear what time frame this has been calculated over, but we do know that GDP can ebb and flow. GDP growth recently has been rather flat and lower than 5.4% over the last decade. But at the same time, Christchurch has experienced relatively high growth, and so this situation does make us question whether this is the best measure for council growth. But as I said earlier, we don't have a lot of the information analysis available on this, so it does make it hard for us to be confident in the model that they are using. But it does seem like CPI and GDP are not the best reflections for what is driving rates growth. For question 2, that one asks, if not, so if you don't agree with the indicators, what economic indicators do you suggest and why? Does setting the minimum of the target in line with inflation ensure that councils can maintain service standards? So we can't say for sure that 2% minimum ensures that we can maintain our service standards. So as you have just heard, this minimum would require significant savings. We also note that our preferred and the more relevant measure for local government inflation is produced by Burl, which has been mentioned. We're also curious that the government hasn't considered other indexes such as the capital goods price index. This index, for instance, is produced by Stats and measures the price changes for capital assets produced by purchasers and seems more relevant for local government investment because we invest in things like network infrastructure and buildings. So the capital goods price index measures the price change for things like land, buildings, roads, bridges, pipes, plant and machinery. Interestingly, research done by Infometrics last year showed that when using this measure, the cost of civil construction was obviously higher than CPI. So for example, in their research in the 3 years leading up to 2023, CPI rose by about 19%, but the cost of building bridges rose 38%, sewers 30%, and roads and water supply were 27% more expensive. Moving on to the final 3 questions. So question 3 is, does the maximum of the target for council spending on account for council spending on core services? So again, at this stage, we can't guarantee that the 4% maximum accounts for spending on core services, as significant savings, again, will be required to make this target, and also noting that these decisions haven't been made yet. That leads quite well into question 4, which they are asking us, which is what council spending will not be able to take place under a rates cap. Essentially, decisions about this are going to come later, and it will be a decision of the council, and so we can't really at this stage answer that question. And finally, the 5th question is, are changes to the target needed to account for variations between regions and councils? What changes do you propose and why? So we think that this is probably a good idea. Different councils have different profiles and have different needs. Some councils are growing faster than others. Some have lots of old assets that need renewing, some don't. Councils have different risks, such as environmental risks or financial risks. So this one-size-fits-all method is quite a blunt approach and unlikely to work well for all councils. So the other 5 questions that they are asking in the consultation, you may want to also take the opportunity to raise some other points. And on the slide at the moment, some of the other points about rates caps that have been raised previously by council was discussed in things such as this recent submission on the Local Government System Improvements Amendment Bill. So these briefly are stating that our council doesn't lack fiscal discipline. We might also want to note that there are risks around rates caps. This limits a key source of revenue, as we know. It is possible that there is asset decay and underinvestment with rates caps. It does make it difficult to close any investment deficit in infrastructure. And we could also refer to the experiences of overseas, such as in Australia and the UK. Other things that we have mentioned before is that the council will likely need to investigate new sources of revenue funding, so whether that be fees, user pay systems, accessing more debt, introducing levies. We'll have to consider those. And finally, that other government assistance would be welcome. So the Crown could pay rates, the Crown could remove GST from rates or share the GST from rates. So without these other types of measures, it does make it more difficult for councils. Just finally, two slides here on the submission process. So we're talking to you today, and then we'll get drafting underway after this meeting. And so given the holiday break, there is quite a quick turnaround on this one. We plan to come back to council on a workshop on the 20th of January, which I think is your first week back as councillors, with our draft submission. We will then look to finalise it on the 4th of February and submit it on the same day. And here are the next steps more broadly. So those top 3 bullet points is what I just mentioned, aiming for that 4th of February timeframe. But just to also note that there will be more cabinet decisions on the detailed elements of rates capping in early to mid 2026. The expectation is that there will be the rates cap legislation introduced in mid 2026 before the general election. This would mean legislation will be passed in 2027. And as Mitch has already said, this would come fully into effect in 2029. That's it, thanks.
Hey, thank you for that. That's really, it's been useful to understand where we're sort of going with it and what sits in behind it. Got a few questions, and we are going to have a break in 15, at 12:15. So we've got Andre, then Tyler, Pauline, Nathaniel, and Victoria.
Thank you. Can I suggest that any submission makes mention of central government imposed costs? So, for example, last year we had a 0.2%-ish on water regulator charges. So I guess the question to ask is, does government reserve the right to impose more costs between now and 2028 when we're trying to plan for a rates increase? And then if they does the rates cap include central government imposed costs? So I guess that's something that really needs to be clarified as part of this process, and our submission should make mention of it. Yeah, it's citing an example. There we've got. Thank you.
In regards to the question 1, for your proposed response, I'm wondering if we could bolster it, give it a bit more weight. Question 2 obviously answers that, which is great. I think that the recommendations that you had in terms of adding to the submission were absolutely phenomenal. Thanks for that. But the question 3 and 4, if we refer to 3 and 4 here, I know that this is governance here in regards to question 3, but I'm wondering, you're saying that you can't get the information, but based off the modelling that we just had, we do have information around some modelling. Would that be able to be melted into the submission?
We can use some of that modelling into us, probably into our submission if you like. Yeah, what the response to 3 and 4 is essentially getting at is that there's still decisions to be made around what it is that, or how we will fit the new budget essentially, and what those decisions are going to be. So that's just referring to that.
And there's one big fish that we're missing here, which is around the potential of unitary or super city councils, and the imposed costs that would probably have if we look at Auckland, for example. What's the timeline look like that when these are taking place at the same time?
So the rates cap, so the end point potentially from what the government has announced on both these fronts is roughly the same, which is that 2029. So the implementation of a rates cap, as sort of Mitch outlined, we have to between now and then get there, and that would happen over the same time frame as potentially what the government has announced in terms of the original government reforms.
So we could be looking at tens of millions of dollars to create a unitary or super city council at the same time as the rates cap is supposed to be coming into play.
It's potentially.
I think that there needs to be consideration for that around, obviously, as Andre was alluding to, around the imposed government reforms and the costs that councils are going to have to bear, because that is a significant one. Because if we do have to pay for the unitary or super city, then we're going to have to cut more core services, because the non-core obviously are something that's not even taking a dent into that 4% rates cap.
I had a feeling, and I don't know if it's this or the RMA stuff, that government are going to fund it. So I could be wrong.
Oh,
but
we'll find out at lunchtime. Eh?
Yeah, it might be the RMA. Or it was one of them they're going to fund. So
because that is very significant.
Then I mean, if we can model, taking 4 councils down to 1, that's going to be a significant overhead reduction as well. So we need to factor that in.
Yeah, of course.
So based on Auckland and Auckland's response to COVID, is that the cost is in their transition, but longer term you find the savings. So that was but that's...
There could be some alleviances given based off of the restructure. We don't know. But just maybe alluding to some policy change would be really cool. But I think that you guys are going to do a great job. Trust you. Thanks heaps.
I think it's me. Similar to Tyler, and I totally support Andre's comments around unfunded mandates and not built in here. So question 4, I think we could put some detail in there. For instance, we clearly know it would affect our rating for renewal program. So that's a program we've got in place with a finish line at 2032, and it would very highly affect that. And I think also the risk of our Standard & Poor's credit downgrade, which would cost us. And I think we should put examples in so that they know. And I'm wondering if we can actually perhaps build in, when you do that unfunded mandate section, that maybe the cost of PC 14 in there was enormous. There'll be more to come, and that would be a great example. And also, could we get a rough figure on the cost of all these submissions that we've done over even the last, 2-3 years? Must be phenomenal. Have they taken that into account? I just think it's like, to me, they don't seem to have an understanding of local government that, 93% of our work is core services and water and pipes, roading, but the remainder, that they've got to get a concept of these additional costs that we cannot avoid paying, like unfunded mandates. They need to have an idea of that. So I do think we should be putting examples in. Not too wordy, just bullet points so they don't skip over it.
Cool. So a few quick ones. So is the submission that we end up giving to government, is that going to be public, or will that be that'll be open public submission? Great. So for the question number 3, it would be good if we were to include pushing for clarification and that we would want this to be an existing ratepayer cap and not a nominal cap, because that growth issue. And then kind of related to what Tyler said on number 4, if I don't know if this is realistic, fair enough if it's not, but if we could get a ballpark of the cost of all of the non-core, as you defined earlier, sort of the non-core services that we provide, and comparing that cost to that $200 million budget hole with the 2% or something like that. So we're sort of comparing the actual cost of the non-core services with the savings we're required to make for question 4. And then on the sort of number 5, I think it was the different councils being treated a bit differently depending on circumstance. I thought it would be good if we included something around the value within a rating area of the non-rate paying buildings, like the government buildings and the university buildings, and how that needs to be taken into account when the rates cap is calculated. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I support the idea of giving examples. So, under 4 and number 5, I think we should be saying to just get our core services back to the day they were before the earthquake. I think we've got an 83-year target now for roading. If the rate caps comes in, that'll probably blow up to 200 or 300 years. So I think giving real life examples around the challenges that we face, and I think that ties into 5 as well. Are changes to the target needed to account for variations between regions and council? What changes do you propose and why? Absolutely. We had a significant earthquake. We've got significant infrastructure damage. We're working hard to fix it. It's certainly a case, I think, for some variation. So, yeah. I know in our infrastructure strategy we tried to pull out some of that high level data. So the more data we can get around that, I think the more persuasive our argument will be to central government.
I like your comments, you could use capital letters and bold print if you like to say council does not lack fiscal discipline, because I think we're actually sick of being insulted as well. But what is our view here? Are we actually support, as a council, are we supporting a cap but not this one, or do we not want any cap at all? We want the freedom. So do we have a view, or do we want to have a view on that?
Well, I think we'd want to.
I think we'll come back
Yeah.
with the draft submission, get some indication then, because I think
We might have to do 2 submissions.
Yeah, well, that's sort of where I'm coming at, because I mean, obviously we can see that the 4 is not particularly going to work for us. Do we want to pick another number? Do we want some advice on what that number could be that we could operate under, or do we want flexibility? And I think that's a question we need to ask.
Yeah, and I think you probably need a bit more time to debate that round the table, because you're sort of out of time.
I think
now.
the bigger question is, what is central government and government's opinion of local government's fiscal abilities to balance the books? Because why are they looking at the rates cap? Find out the fundamental of what the difference is between central government's illusion, or whatever you want to call it, of local government and our fiscal responsibilities, and what their perception of communities are. I think that's the fundamental question, because at the moment it seems to me, and if you looked at it, they would feel that we have no vision or responsibility of levels of spend. We're just throwing money everywhere. And this is from, yeah, it is. So what is the assumption? Where does it come from? What's the reality? Because if you're going to go government, look at Parakiuri.
Fair point. The other things I'd be keen to see is some stuff around, like, if we say, hey, look, if we, and I think you're right, I think we'd have to consult the pub. I genuinely think we'd have to talk to the community if we offered a view that we didn't support, or we did support the rates cap. So I think we might be able to just answer the questions. But I'd be keen to have something in there around, and it's a bit to your point around the unfunded mandate stuff, but it's actually the regulatory stuff that ties up millions and millions and millions of dollars a year in unproductive work that we have to do, and that we don't have any discretion around to go, actually, it's not material for the organisation, we still need to do pieces of work. So I think if we could go with some other things that say, look, we'll attempt to, we'll answer your questions, but we need you to work with us to help reduce some of the red tape barriers that we get really frustrated about, and that literally just have people employed constantly to work for. We may get some of that at 1 o'clock, but we might get, but there'll be more. I've got no doubt there'll be more. The other thing I wondered, and it'd be cool just to bring it back, and whether we consider putting in the submission, would just be our sort of rating per capita, or however we want to frame it, compared to the other metros across the country, so that we can go, actually, guys, we run surpluses, we kind of are responsible in how we manage it, and as a result our per capita is sitting at this, and kind of just demonstrate that because we do know what we're doing, it's, yeah.
Rate we struck last year, was under 5% in real terms without Te Kaha. So actually we're not far off the mark. So
I think that'd be good if we could factor that in. That'd be really good. But I think we've probably landed about where we need to now, and we'll come back at 1:15. If that suits. Thank you, team. That was great. Welcome back, everyone, to the workshop. We're going to go into the annual plan now, and so the purpose of this is to run through, the team will talk through it, but we're going to get guidance today on what we want included and what we don't, so that we can land it for the F&P meeting next week. So I'll hand over to you and we'll go from there.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Look, a quick catch up on where we are. You've obviously seen the first presentation on the rates cap. The next set of items, firstly, is feedback from the 2 free range days and the choices you have around what you do with those, whether they proceed to the annual plan or not. We've got some savings options for you at the, I guess, corporate or strategic level. Then there's some analytical review savings, which are more operational level. There's a look ahead to potential savings for the LTP. Obviously, that's not going to be in next week's finance report, but it's a look ahead. And lastly, a discussion around the cathedral. So that's the rest of the afternoon. Right, so feedback from the free range days. This is only the stuff relevant to the annual plan. The LTP stuff has been corralled separately. It isn't forgotten. We are getting advice on it, but it's not for today. So, safe school crossing at South Hornby School. The recommendation here is that it doesn't impact on the annual plan, but the board to continue working on finalising the design. So what we're looking for here is this okay? Are you okay with the recommendation? Do we have a yes, or is there some other complexity around it?
Being the instigator of that one, happy to leave that with the board, community board to finalise that design.
So, okay, recommendation accepted. Right, okay, thank you. If we're lucky, we can just crack on through these.
Is it, is the money there for the design phase of it? Is that what you're saying? Thank you.
Cool. So you happy, Mark? Yep, cool.
Okay, Hornby High, this is very much the same thing in that it probably doesn't impact on the plan, but the board needs to work through the interventions program, staff to look at solutions. If the solutions don't fit within the existing program, then consider through the LTP. So in other words, can we do it with what we've got? If not, then go to the LTP.
Mark, another one.
Mildly happy with that, but we need to make sure we can find a way to get it working in that program. We've got 1,000 students every day.
I understand.
Yep, it's a safety issue, big time.
In the program of works, these are scheduled, and so they're not pushing any other community boards hierarchy or whatever. So these are in tranche. They're given the tick, and it's all good. It doesn't affect anyone else's, because we just heard today that, you know, if we lower speed limits, suddenly your footpath drops in this priority. And yesterday I found out if we blacktop a road, suddenly that drops off because it's being blacktopped. The fact that the rest of the road's crap is irrelevant.
So this one is this one and the next one. It's the same conversation. Is they are not currently programmed, so we need to work with the community board to get them programmed as part of the minor safety interventions, and that will be a reprioritisation of that board for that board's area.
So the program we're talking about is the Hornby area, or their board's area.
Hornby,
so that doesn't affect other boards' areas. It's totally separate. Yeah, that's all of it. Yep. Thank you.
Both this one and the next one, the schools have come to our board. Yeah. So you have to have a conversation at the board level.
So is that also the same for St Bernadette's?
Yeah, so long as these conversations happen and we can start to get some traction.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Can I just ask what the quantum of funding is for each community board for the minor safety improvements program?
It's a citywide budget.
No, well, it says to work through their currently agreed minor safety intervention program. So I'm just wondering how much budget do they have to prioritise with?
So Lynette, yeah, this is a very, I don't want to be pedantic, this is a very simple one that Mark's comfortable with. He proposed it. We're effectively saying no impact on the annual plan. Can we park this one and keep moving, and then we can come back with the more
Sure.
generic questions for the annual.
But I'm just, in terms of the response that was given, is that the board can reprioritise within the minor safety program. I'm just trying to understand what that budget.
It's a citywide budget.
So that's what I thought. So if the board reprioritises, then they're taking stuff off other areas.
No, they get their three that they push to the top.
Well, that's what I was trying to get clarity and just understand.
Yeah, nothing's changed, has it? Yeah. Okay, cool. So we'll keep moving.
Okay. Older person advocate resource. Again, we could reprioritise existing resources rather than add an additional FTE. Recommendation that staff look at availability of existing resources and reprioritise.
Mel, are you comfortable with that? Cool. I've got a question from Aaron, and then we'll keep going.
Yeah, it was just one on if it's possible on the ones that Mark put up, not so much Melanie's because that's metro, but Mark's ones are local. Can we rate in a way that any councillor can put up anything in their ward? So, like, say there's the board priorities, the transport team go, look, here's our rankings, and this will get done in this period. But if a board goes or a local goes, no, we want a pedestrian crossing there that's $1 million next year, it can be rated in that area and just goes ahead. So the people of Hornby want 5 more crossings. They can get. Can we do that?
I think we get expert advice. My initial would be no. Okay. I don't think we can rate by ward. Would that be correct?
So we could potentially, but not in an annual plan. It's a policy decision that would, for targeted rates,
Yes.
it would need to be an LTP. Okay.
It effectively would be a targeted rate.
Okay.
Good job coming up.
All right, let's keep moving. So Mel's one, we were fine. It's going to be done within existing budgets.
Okay. You may be aware there's a workshop planned for the 16th on the iconic buildings discussion. There's no need to really go into the detail here. That'll be revealed on the 16th. We happy to move on from there? Okay. Reviewing the capital program. Now, this has been quite a big thing right through the last few months of the year. There's a slide later on that quantifies all the detail, but I think you're aware of it, that PMO and Paul Dadson in particular have presented to you numbers already about an extensive redrafting, rephasing of the capital program down to a level we actually believe we can deliver. So what we're looking for there, and if you like, I can go to slide 26. I think that would be a good idea. Just flicking forward so you know what we're dealing with. I can't see what this.
I'll show
okay.
you what it looks like.
There.
Yeah.
So capital program deliverability review.
Peter, we haven't got Tyrone online yet. Can we just
Come back to
skip this? Come back to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll circle back to capital program deliverability. Okay. 3 water capital program budget rephasing. I think this is very much the same. We've presented to you on the 13th a capital program to address deliverability, and again the recommendation, maybe you want to treat it the same way and circle back, but it's to bring it down to a level that we believe is actually concrete and deliverable.
I'm just trying to understand why this program isn't deliverable at the moment. Like, what's the bottleneck?
I think Gavin would be the correct person to address that. The reasons are almost certainly not simple and ones that I should do off the hip. It's a complex issue. There's different activities involved, different contracts, different outcomes. I think that's a very nuanced answer.
It's a lot easier to plan a deliverable program at an LTP because you do it over things. It's quite difficult for some projects if they're not in design or contract now to deliver them in the next year.
Right.
So it's deliverability is a much bigger issue, and you can get more precise in the annual plan and say if it's not at a certain stage now, we're not able to deliver it, or all our contractors are locked in, don't have capacity.
Is there going to be something that results from the F&P reporting around the increased inspections? Because one of the concerns was we actually don't have good data because we don't have sufficient budget to do inspections.
Oh, that's a different issue about deliverability of a capital program.
Okay, so let's keep going. Yep.
Okay.
My question was really around, are we actually delivering and able to deliver enough to actually meet our levels of service there, including we're really trying to reduce our leakage and making sure we've got the ability to implement or install the meters. Are we actually doing what we need to do?
Yes, Councillor. Short answer is yes, we do. Some of the deliverability was driven, and Paul could probably confirm this, it was driven by delays and things like that, so pushed out. We can't deliver a job if we haven't got everything over the line yet, but we'll confirm that through in later sessions that we are still going to meet our levels of service.
Yeah, because that was just couched in my concern
Yeah.
was the amount that we've taken out of the capital program, knowing how much of that is waters and how important that
Can
is
we
to
confirm that
people.
by the time the paper comes to FMP next week?
Sure.
Just to
Thank you.
Councillor.
Cool. Okay, let's keep
Okay.
going.
Housing affordability, including first-time home ownership. It's a little bit repetitive, but no impact on annual plan recommended for LTP consultation, investigation, partnership. I mean, this is a large, complex issue. It's not something you can wrap up quickly. We're recommending that there be an integrated approach in the LTP.
Cool. And Daniel's got a question.
Oh, it's more sort of feedback. So, I mean, and there's the next few are also part of the same thing, right? It's all how we talk about housing.
Yep.
I would really push for us to have that question in the annual plan so that we have that information when we're making our initial draft long-term plan decisions.
Well, I think that's what we're suggesting here, that we go out in the annual plan and consult on the concept.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were suggesting that we wait until the LTP to consult.
No.
Oh, great. Awesome.
Include in the AP consultation what is the council's role, so we get to steer on what people.
I thought that only the part after recommendation was the recommendation, but
So
I see it's the whole.
to be really
Got
clear, it won't be a proposal in the annual
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah.
It'll be consulted in the annual
Yeah,
plan.
great. No,
Is
I
that
support
what
that.
you're
That's
suggesting?
good. Yeah.
Cool. Yanni?
I think this may have got a little bit misconstrued, but I mean, I welcome us doing something on it. So the two things that, in terms of the GCP housing strategy, was inclusionary zoning and some sort of development levy. So I'm just trying to understand what, in terms of the consultation, with the scope of what we would look at, if those sorts of things would be included.
I think that'll come back.
Okay.
Okay, let's
And
keep
then the
going.
other thing was, I think the point I was making when we discussed this was the Housing Trust is doing the local members bill, but it doesn't talk about first-time home ownership. So it was kind of seeing whether there was a ability to look at, provide that feedback into that, because they're doing some really good stuff in that space. Yeah. So they're doing a local members bill, and it seemed odd that in their proposal it doesn't mention first-time home ownership, even though they're doing work in that space. Yeah.
We'll
Yeah,
note
sure.
it and let
Okay.
David know.
Okay.
But in terms of the consultation, we would come back to you with the scope of that for the consultation document of the annual plan.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Cool. Good. Great. Keep going.
Again, this is deferring to the LTP. It's very similar. I'll give you a moment to digest that, I think.
This is just the same thing.
It's all the same? So you... Right.
Should be consulted with it.
So you're comfortable? Okay. Same?
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Would you call it more like early engagement through the city?
Oh, sorry. Right. So just so we're clear, we're on the homelessness citywide strategy, and I've got a quick Tim and Yanni.
So just to clarify, you will be coming back to us with what we're going to be consulting on with all of this bundled together.
Yes, there'll be a proposal in the CD, a draft CD for you to consider.
Right, because I guess one of the questions for me would be, would Christchurch ratepayers be comfortable putting their rates outside of Christchurch to fund this in other regions? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So we've already made a decision in the annual plan to get a report. So when is that report coming back to us? Because that report was supposed to have options for funding and for consultation.
So the team are coming back with the consultation question, so I'm not sure that there's anything else we can do on that now. So can we...
Sorry, so you're saying we're going to consult as part of that annual plan, even though we've just consulted and we've made a resolution based on submissions to get a report to council?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is there is no budget impact. We're not going to spend an hour on it today. So can we keep moving?
Or can I just...
So just to be clear, we didn't consult on it in the last annual plan. It came up as an issue that you're concerned about and asked for some work to be done. And actually, since that time, it's got bigger, more complex, and we're now suggesting bundling up all the housing, homelessness, the different forms.
Yeah.
Should council be involved in housing, and what type of housing is it going to be, and should it also be involved in homelessness, and consult on that in the annual plan, and then we will have time to build it in, including all the rate impact and all the costs for the LTP, because it is a significant change of policy and a significant financial commitment that would need to be in an LTP.
So just the one thing that, and I've circulated around the councillors, was the idea of the Downtown Emergency Services Centre, which I know we've got some land in Hereford Street, for example. So like in terms of a tangible example of a project, is that going to be considered as part of this, or is that being done separately?
I think that's being done outside, but we can follow up and come back with what's happening with that Hereford Street, because that paper, the presentation has come to council like that. I just don't know where that's at, but we'll come back. That's outside of the annual plan. So
it's just that potentially if we wanted to progress something there, it would be good to know what we'd need to do on the annual plan to do that, if we need to do something. Cool.
Partnership thing.
Aaron?
Yeah, just to work forward on this, I think one of the best things that Yanni could do is maybe use his own money to develop some housing for some of these people, and then learn from those experiences, bring it back to the table and say, here are the barriers I hit when I was trying to develop and do these places, and this is why it did or didn't stack up. Because if he comes up with something really good that he's done himself, skin in the game, I'm happy to listen.
So let's keep going.
Littleton Museum.
Since he's been on such a big salary for so long, since he's a child.
Cheers, bro.
Let's keep going.
Okay. Staff recommend deferring the request from Littleton Museum to the LTP. It's not a council-owned entity, so it can't really be part of our capital program. It would actually be a grant. So they're recommending that we consider this in the LTP.
I'm looking at you. Carry on. Cool. Okay, carry on. So carry on.
That's a yes?
Yep.
Yes.
Strengthening Communities Fund. This is from Councillor Coker and McDonald. It's funded via rates.
Yeah, just for the public record, we're suggesting different things. Yeah. And I was told that unless I can't remove the whole fund unless we go to an LTP. So. Yeah, giving them their own.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yes. Okay, sorry. Sorry, Pete.
So that's okay. The recommendation is consult on the council's preferred option to retain, which could be retain, increase or decrease.
So can I just, I know we discussed this and I can't quite remember what it is. Was this the idea that this would be a proposal or just a consultation?
If the council agrees to propose an increase, retain or decrease, that would go out for consultation.
As a proposal, as
As a
opposed
proposal,
to just seeking
yes.
reviews?
Okay. Yes.
Yep. Couldn't remember, sorry.
And just leave it as it is.
Okay. Okay.
For this year.
So as a status quo is 2% increase.
It's baked in
That's
already.
baked in the LTP. Yeah.
So
We'll save the question.
So that's a yes on retain.
Just keep status quo. Status quo. Yeah. And hey, and Mel and I have just compromised in the public domain. So, yeah. Okay, let's keep going.
That's
Sold.
twice in
Okay.
a year. Didn't you agree on something in the last annual plan?
Okay, we're nearly there.
Nearly there. Diamond Harbour Dog Exercise Area. No impact on annual plan. Locations are being looked at consideration could be given to adding budget in the LTP. There's no actual site at the moment.
Well, I think there is a site to do.
Sorry,
to do
so there's no
something
funding.
temporary.
There's no funding.
Yeah, I mean, there's a site of council-owned land in Diamond Harbour that's currently earmarked for a multi-immersion school and a fire station, but the balance of the land should come up for public consultation. It's supposed to come up for consultation this year, hasn't done. I would like to see that made it into at least a temporary dog exercise area, or some part of it.
Whack a fence around it, basically. Like, yeah.
So Rupert, does Rupert, do you
Because the current arrangements have basically hamstrung the community from having their say on the balance of the land, and that's kind of, I just want to try and expedite that.
And don't worry if you can't answer it now.
But that's only on the parts of the land that have been earmarked for negotiation with third parties, right? There is a balance of the land that is still under the council ownership.
Can I just be clarified? This could potentially be done outside
Yeah.
needing to add anything to an annual plan. So if we get a situation and find an area, Parks could actually develop it. It doesn't need anything.
I think there's a medium-term
built into annual
solution,
plan.
and a long-term solution can wait for the LTP. Yeah.
Yeah. So it could be out of a.
So we're good?
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
As long as I get some feedback on that.
Yep, I think Phil's already drawing a map of the fencing.
Yeah.
He's already priced it. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, this one's kind of two things. There's the playground and the toilet block. It's possible to deliver the toilets at the same time as the playground, but doing so would mean reshuffling the program of work. So it is recommended that the playground should go ahead. However, the refurbishment, other than safety modifications, either for a later plan or for reprioritising and substitution by the board. Yes.
So just so I'm clear in my mind, to put toilets in within the existing budget. But it'll be in your area. It's in
I guess that is the critical point, is that a few councillors have mentioned within the area.
Right. Toilets are funded district-wide, and there's a prioritisation schedule, so it would mean if this one went up, another one goes down. And that's really the challenge, and it's done on a scale of need.
You're not going to fly.
The detail needs to be talked out within the community board.
Nathaniel had the first question.
Yes, I think we can, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this, because as far as the annual plan is concerned, I don't think we need anything in the annual plan on this. I have some, we talked about this before, I have some different ways that I want us to do things and figure it out as far as next steps for the playground and the toilets and stuff. But as far as this discussion about the annual plan, we can just, it's not in the annual plan. I'm happy. Yeah.
That means there are no other questions on it, and we'll move to the next slide.
Okay.
What's that? Oh, do we have? I just don't want to talk about a playground that's got no impact on the annual.
I'm not talking about the playground. So there were wider councillor questions within that workshop that we had, and I'm wondering when they're going to be coming up.
In terms of?
For example, I was talking about referring to transport around optimisation of intersections, things like that.
Yeah, it's not in this workshop. Will come up for a separate one. There are sheets and sheets of information that we'll be getting that all back to councillors as well.
Because you're right. You know, we talked about speeding up the getting the intersections with green lights and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like and it's almost like, how do we get the easy stuff just done?
Yeah.
Yep.
So that'll come back.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay,
so the things that don't need to be built in today by the finance team ready for next week, because it will have to be finished tomorrow, will come back during the year.
So for consultative arrangements that we want to actually add into the annual plan, would that be through this workshop, or would that be through a separate one?
I don't think you'd be consulting on that. We'd need to do some work first and come up with a plan.
Because I thought something would be really beneficial is if we ask the public, because we have our own analysis, our own evidence database analysis of the phasing with the lights. But there are some really big social pinch points for the public. And if you wanted to get more submitters to come in, then they would come in and talk about certain intersections that would be niggly to them.
Yeah. Can we come back with some information? I don't think it's an annual plan topic, but it doesn't mean you can't consult on it.
Because it's around our level of service and which ones we want to
It's
prioritise.
around.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping we could actually do the work a lot quicker.
Yeah,
30
yeah.
June.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. So
Okay.
but let's have a look.
Yep.
Because
So-
some of it should be really simple.
Yeah.
Like it should just be literally rephase
About
or
changing
chuck
the way
in
we do things without an annual plan.
Yeah. Cool.
So just to finish that block of work, of all the issues you raised at Free Range Day, these are the ones that require annual plan work.
Yep.
There are operational things and LTP things that are not in today. Okay, if they can be sorted out as part of day-to-day business, they don't need a resolution in the annual plan. If they're LTP, they're not in here either. It doesn't mean we've forgotten either of those other sets.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm not missing something. Because so for the Waltham Playground one, that's basically what we're saying is that is really all LTP related, or at least it's not annual plan related, right?
It doesn't require resolution in the annual plan.
Yeah. So there was no. I just want to make sure I'm not. So there's nothing for us to decide on it actually at all, because it's nothing related to the annual plan. That's right. Yeah. No. Good. Okay. Cool.
Okay. So now we move on to.
It's just that some of this that we're talking about that you brought up with the toilets, etc. The community board has a list of priorities, and that hasn't been discussed between us at the moment. So it may have dropped down, but that's not for this discussion because yes. So that's.
Yeah, so again, just to go back to the annual plan where we've already made decisions on stuff to happen, like a report on Pacific funding for SPAC Pack, are we going to get a report on that as part of consideration for the draft annual plan? Or is it like, do I need to start moving amendments now just to do it?
The information you asked for in your workshop, and as Peter said, these are the ones that need a resolution for the annual plan to be built into the budget. There's the other ones that are LTP matters and the others that are operational. You will get all those sheets with those details later this week. And we are just checking any outstanding resolutions from the annual plan. So
Right.
we'll let you know when you'll get the data back on those.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be helpful, like to flag like the vert ramp for the skateboarding, for example. We've agreed to do the feasibility study.
Okay, so we'll
But it'd be-
have a look and see
yeah.
what's outstanding and circulate that.
Yeah, because that came up before, so we can check Councillor Hanson on that.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Okay, right. So moving on from Free Range Day and all the feedback, we now have, if you like, a recipe we can build into Finance Committee's report for next week. Savings options, projected rates increases and potential savings. I think we need the finance team up at the table here to step through some of this stuff.
Good afternoon, councillors. So the slide in front of you outlines the changes to the annual plan that have been made so far. So at the end of last annual plan, we were projecting a 10.52% increase in the 26-27 financial year. In our initial annual plan build, we've reduced that by 1.3% down to 9.2%. You've previously received and given some feedback around the level of the CapEx deliverability review, which, if incorporated, reduces the rates increase to existing ratepayers to 8.5%. There are some other potential upcomings to consider, being the potential completion of the cathedral by unpausing the targeted rate, which would add roughly 0.1%. And in our previous annual plan, the 27-28 financial year had a balanced budget. Our updated projections are now showing that year is unbalanced, so we would potentially suggest increasing rates in that year to achieve a balanced budget. So at the moment, if those factors were to be incorporated, we're looking at a potential rates increase in the upcoming financial year to existing ratepayers of 8.6%, 9.4% the year following, and 5.6% the year after that.
Sorry, Tyrone's here, so and we might go back into that capital slide. Sorry, I should have mentioned it before, but can we just whip back to just so we've locked in that feedback as well? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So do you want to, Pete? Do you want to talk to this one, or Paul? Whoever wants to talk through it, just so we can then get the guidance.
So
I think
I might
we're going to go to slide 26.
Go forward to slide 26. So slide 26 is, yep, the slide here. So when the PMO team and Paul came, there was a resolution at the last annual plan that we would carry out a review on the deliverability and capital expenditure of the council's capital program for this upcoming financial year. So the team's gone away and done some work to identify an appropriate level of capital expenditure and an achievable level of deliverability. Based on our historic expenditure over the last couple of years, we've been expending around $490 million a year on CapEx in terms of actuals. And the current forecast for our current financial year is somewhere between $500 and $510 million. The original budget for this financial year upcoming was $778.8 million, taking into account carry forwards. With the team's review, they've reduced that number to $586.2 million in the upcoming financial year, noting that around $42 million of that is for the activated sludge project. That reduction falls across primarily 2 financial years due to the timing and phasing of interest expense and debt repayment for capital works. So it would reduce rates in the upcoming annual plan year by 0.71% and would also reduce rates in the following year by 0.89%. The outer years of the capital program have not been re-reviewed or updated for deliverability at this stage. That would come back as part of a larger set of works in the LTP, taking into account the financial strategy and infrastructure strategy.
And we've obviously workshopped this as well, which is good. Tyler, I think you're the first. So just, sorry, before you do, so just I've got it really clear in my mind. So we're at 580, but 45 of that. So 45 of that is sort of that external contract around the activated sludge.
That's
so
correct.
our core is 540, and I'm sure Tyrone will ask the question as well. It's 540. We can deliver 490 to 510. What are we? Why are we still at that number?
Over that period, we would expect there to be a level of inflation. We're essentially comparing a 2-year jump in our budget, or 1-year jump. If solely inflation was applied to the 24-25 actual delivery, you come to around a capital expenditure of $530 million. Okay. So it's getting to about so that
plus
point.
This activated new year.
Correct.
Cool, Tyler.
I just have a question around the capital program at project level. Out of these changes, this is for Lynette, which are these Crown Council projects that we're cutting? So Kiwi Rail or NZTA co-funded?
My understanding is that no projects have been cut from the budget. Budgets have simply been rephased and aligned with deliverability and our expected capital expenditure.
Okay, so there's no timelines that we are required to have with the Crown if there is deferrals?
I'm unable to speak to that question, Councillor.
Okay. No, that's cool. That answers enough for me. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you. Sorry, I just wanted a little bit more further confirmation. I didn't quite understand the jump from 490 to 586. Just you said there was an inflation component.
There is an inflation component.
So as in like inflation, like the cost of goods and services,
yes,
losing value or whatever. Yeah. So and that takes it to what? 530.
About 530. And then there's a one-off project for activated sludge of around $40 to $45 million.
Right, so 490 to 530, I mean, that's like 10% inflation. So that's what we're picking.
Over 2 years, yes.
Right. And somehow we're going to squish in an extra project for activated sludge as well as do everything else that we say we're going to do there, all within a total, like is the ability of Christchurch Construction to supply or our ability to get market share going to increase by another 10%, and how are we going to do that? Like, I don't get it. Like, because the overall construction sector in Christchurch is probably not going to grow by 10%.
The activated sludge is under contract. So if you take the activated sludge, a bit like we did with Te Kaha, out, you've got a core program of about 540. And
So that's cool. But are they going to get like workers from out of town to do it?
It's under contract.
Yeah.
So it's underway.
Something else is going to give. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but anyway, that's fine.
So I think we're there. So.
Just briefly recap, our current model position for the upcoming annual plan is 8.5%, with some potential add-ons, could be around 8.6%. So that 8.5%, what's driven the increase in the rates? Inflation is the largest component, driving 2.96% of the rates increase, which is made up of an OPEX increase in inflation of 3.1% and a CAPEX increase of around 3.4%. We're currently increasing our rating for renewals in line with our financial strategy to achieve full rating for renewals by 2032. That's accounting for 2.78% of the rates increase. The capital program is contributing 2.12%. That is a mix of last year's capital program and this year's capital program, being the timing of when the debt repayment and interest expense is incurred by council. In the last annual plan, we used savings at the surplus from the 24-25 financial year. Because that was a one-off saving, it results in an increase in the rates in this upcoming financial annual plan. Te Kaha is contributing a 1% increase to rates. That's once again driven by the capital expenditure last year and in the upcoming year, which is much smaller. That's due to the timing of debt repayment and interest expense. During the LTP, the council resolved to increase rates by 0.25% to apply to a climate resilience fund. Operational expenditure has been reduced slightly, and we have other savings in the corporate area around subvention receipts, dividends, timing of on-lending interest and debt repayment, and we are expecting around 1% rating growth in the base, which brings us to our 8.51% rates increase to existing ratepayers. So when we've prepared the annual plan, we've already incorporated some savings options. In the last annual plan, we were requested to also carry out a review of potential savings options, and many of them were multi-year savings. So we produced around $4.68 million of savings in insurance due to staff meeting with brokers and freeing up additional availability for the council. We reviewed our electricity contract pricing, which produced around a $3 million savings. We updated and reviewed our resource recovery and waste management budgets. We identified additional subvention receipts that the council was likely to receive. We looked to rationalise vehicle usage, identified some savings in consultants and a few minor FTEs. We also had a capital deliverability last year, which has produced savings to this year due to the timing of debt repayment and interest expense. So all up, in the last annual plan, we identified $24.6 million of savings, which have already been incorporated into this annual plan. When we did the initial build of the current annual plan, we identified some additional savings. Once again, insurance was identified as an ongoing saving. So we've updated those assumptions. The Burwood landfill Consent was extended, which generates additional revenue for council, and we re-reviewed and updated our subvention receipts forecast. So that has resulted in an additional $10 million of savings, which has already been built into our current annual plan projections. We also went away and looked for other savings to present to council to allow them to make a decision. I'd just like to ask Matt Pratt if he's able to come up.
Thank you. Some of these savings you've already discussed in this workshop, so we'll get to those and highlight them when we get there. The first saving for consideration is around the capital programme delivery, which you've already discussed. So that's the detail, so we'll move on from that one. And then there's potential for a saving around grant funding review. You've discussed the first point, potential saving that we looked at. That was around removing the inflation adjustment for Strengthening Communities Fund. I think what you said earlier, if I heard, status quo. So that option is agreed. The other two parts to consider for savings, there's a $300,000 increase to the Environmental Partnership Fund scheduled for this year. You could not do that and pause it, and then that would provide a saving. The other thing that you could consider is applying a pro rata reduction across all contestable grants. And the example that we've put up on the screen is a 5% pro rata.
So that number, 72.39 million, is that what we give out every year in grants? Up the top.
72.39, yes, that is correct. That's the total amount of grants. That includes both OPEX funded grants and...
So twice as much as we spend on roads?
The amount for roads is a net figure, so takes into account the NZTA OPEX subsidy that we receive. But yes, that $72.4 million is the amount we spend on grants. It also includes statutory grants, such as the museum, that we're legally obligated to provide.
Right, I wonder what was pushing it up. Yeah, okay. It would be, I mean, I think it'd be, Sam, I think it'd be a worthwhile question in the annual plan document to ask the public whether we should be giving out $72.39 million in grants a year.
I want to review that. This is the opposite to what we agreed to.
Well, just if the...
So hang on.
But the public might be okay with it and not say anything.
Yeah.
But
So we've got questions, so we'll go Tyler, then Pauline.
Hey, Matt. I asked this for other annual plans, but do we have a scope on the ROI on the grants that we give out in regards to the things that we receive from giving out these grants?
We measure it in different ways for different grants. So something like the Strengthening Communities Fund, the return of investment is looked back at the amount of extra volunteer hours that we would get back, so the amount that can be delivered to the community. Other grants included in the $72 million would be for things like Christchurch, New Zealand, or the Canterbury Museum Trust.
Okay, so if Councillor Kewen did manage to find his way to get that into the consultation document, I would like to look at the ROI based on the grants that we give out to make sure that we're getting all of the information that's required.
Yeah, well, I was going to actually say, I think some of these are 12 to 1, we know that. So the thing is that if we were to reduce some of the environmental funds here, you're interfering with their programs, and we risk that work actually going backwards. We have to keep, this is my view, I'm just saying, so I don't support reducing those at all from what we had in the LTP, because there was a reason for that, and the success of these programs indicated to us that it's really important we get behind these and do this work. A lot of it's on the Port Hills, a lot of it's around our waterways, and they all involve and are actually pivotal to having hundreds and thousands of volunteers that are doing this work for our city. And I think it'll be a tragedy to reduce these, so that's my view.
Thank you. Some of the work done by some other groups for the Environmental Partnership Fund actually do work on council land, basically at a pittance, whereas if we had to pay for rangers to do it, it would cost us a fortune. So, you know, hey? No, it's up on the hills. It's not in the parks, it's up on the hills.
Could we look at, instead of annual grants, looking at 3-year grants? So we've done that with a few things, because a business plan, like for arts, for instance, we've really never been in sync with their workload, because when we give an amount of money, or they're given their grant, they've already had to plan for the year, so it's all kind of out the window in a sense. But if we did a 3-year grant for almost everybody, you'd hope that it would cut down our staff workload, but would also be in line with the principles of a 5-year business plan.
These are multi-year, aren't they?
Yeah. Hang on, Pauline. So, is there anything you want to add to that?
That's something that council could consider for the future, and we could do the work on that.
I've just got one. So I flicked through a query the other day around the grants funding and the rolled over and unspent balances, and the heritage incentive grants. So there's 250 grand that was carried forward. I didn't even know we still had that fund. Like, is there a way we could look at stopping that? Yeah, so there's still 250 in there from last year, and the heritage incentive grants. Yeah, so it'd be good to see whether we could do something with that, just you know, it's if we didn't spend it all. Same with the red zone grants. There was another 260. Hang on, guys. Guys, can we? I do get to have my turn as well, even though I'm chewing. The red zone grants, there was still 260 grand not spent at the end of the financial year as well. So again, it'd be just good to look at and understand, you know, normally if we're, you know, if we don't want to get in the habit of rolling grants forward if they're not needed, we'd much rather not take the cost to the, well, I would much rather not take the cost to the ratepayer. Okay, so what do you need from us here?
I suppose there's two parts.
We've looked at, so Mel and I have agreed on the Strengthening Communities Fund, which is not to touch there. So the two are...
The two below.
The two below. Have we got the voting app?
We want guidance.
Oh, so Yanni's got a question. I just feel like it'll be quite evenly split.
So in terms of that 72 million, I mean, that includes the museum funding, and we've got a levy. Are we expecting an increase to the levy? And if so, what is it? And is that something that we need to be mindful of?
It will be built in. So, so I think what the staff are asking you is not to concentrate on the 72.39 because we haven't given you enough information of the breakdown of that now.
Okay.
It's just to actually concentrate on those last two, because I think we've already got guidance about that first one. The last two, pausing the environmental one and the pro rata across contestable funds of 5%, which would be apart from strengthening communities. So if you could just concentrate on those two, because those are the only two you've got sufficient information in front of you.
The contestable grants, so it doesn't include strengthening communities, that's still quite a significant reduction, and I'm surprised because I don't know what it would be taking off to get to that quantum. So yeah, I personally feel like we need more information, like to the point that Sam raised. If we've got these other things that are being carried forward because they're not being allocated, or maybe they're tagged and not spent.
Okay. So the contestable one, because that probably does include strengthening communities, does it? You probably haven't got information. So the only one we can really get guidance on today is the Environmental Partnership Fund increase.
Okay. Well,
and we could come back with a revised one for that bottom one, the contestable funds, which ones they are, and how much it would be worth
Yep.
for the meeting.
So we're just having questions on the Environmental Partnership Fund now.
Well, I mean, I don't support reducing it, but I would support looking at those other grants that you mentioned.
So when you say it's not reducing it, it's saying not increasing.
It's not increasing it.
Not increasing it, keeping it at that level and not increasing it.
So there's still funding in that pot, yeah. Okay, so Tyler's got a question. I think Victoria had a question.
Just a process question. I'm not clear on what the steer actually means. Does that mean that you continue doing work on it and then it goes to a decision at a meeting?
Yeah, you go.
So if we've got a clear steer like we have had on a number of things, the team will build it into the report and build it into the budget.
Yeah, so then we have to take it out in the meeting.
If we voted on it and got a different direction to be built in, we'd have to take it out.
Yeah. So for the ones that are split,
which is fine.
Could they be separate within the draft annual plan?
Of making a decision on next week, yes. As
Because
long as
I
the
do think that
decision's
these will be
made next week. So if there's things that aren't clear, we'll get you to vote on it next week. But it really needs to be firm next week so the team can build it in over the Christmas period. The finance team need to build up the budget over that Christmas period.
There is a significant risk in the mountain in the way that that's done. So for the contentious ones, I'd really like to separate some of these.
Okay, so we've got Victoria and then Kelly.
Thank you. We've been talking about the 300k increase. The increase aside, is the Environmental Partnership Fund inflation adjusted year on year? No. And how much is it? How much allowance is already there? So if you were to take away the 300k increase, what's the sum that we're talking about per annum?
The budget for the current year is $700,000.
And can anyone remind us on what it was that drove the decision to increase it by 300k, just as a reminder, because I can't remember.
I believe it was an LTP decision. There was a phased increase to the budget over time.
Was it a trade-off instead of building in an inflation adjustment? I can't recall the negotiation.
Because the benefit was so massive, and all the groups needed more money to deliver their projects, so that's why we moved it.
I've got Kelly and then I've got Mel.
Yeah, I'm just a little surprised that in such a large pool of money, $72 million, that we only have sort of three small options in terms of grant funding. Because it seems to me, if this was a house, we're having problems with the mortgage and we are arguing over buying a cheaper toothbrush, as somebody said to me. There are... so I guess my question is...
Yeah. So Kelly, just to remind you that this has been up before and this is what we got. So there was a reluctance to reduce it anymore. So these are the three that were still being considered by the table. So it's not that the staff just haven't put anything else up. They have, and it hasn't got traction. So we're now down at this stage.
The other consideration is...
Hang on, guys, can we just hear from Mitchell?
The other consideration that is around $16 million of the grants is for the economic delivery activity. There's also around $5 million that's for the Capital Endowment Fund, and around $9 million that's for the Christchurch Museum as a statutory levy. So that does take a decent chunk of it.
All right, Pauline. We get everyone's passionate about it all.
We'll bring this one back because there's not a clear direction for a voted on decision next week.
It'll come back next week.
Well, hang on, we've got clear direction on all of them except the Environmental Partnership Fund, as far as I'm concerned. And have we had the view of everyone around the table?
Is this your...
The last two. So
are you chairing it now? Is that how it's working?
So we're bringing it back next week.
Clear direction.
Have I left the meeting? Don't know what's happened there. We've literally... well, you wouldn't believe it. What we've got is Mel and I have agreed on the first one, which is that won't change. Mary said they need more information on the third one, and the environmental one that we've spent the last 20 minutes on, we're going to have to bring back next week. Yeah. I mean, all we're doing on next week is giving some guidance to try and land something in February. So there will still be changes. It isn't the end today. Yeah. Okay. Can we keep moving? So bring that back next week, please.
The next option that we've got up is around the Capital Endowment Fund. There is surplus fund. The Capital Endowment Fund's got $1.5 million of unallocated funds that will carry forward through till next financial year. We're suggesting that the surplus funds get applied to an eligible OPEX project, which would mean that you wouldn't need to rate for that OPEX project.
With that? Cool. And the urban development, we've already done that to death.
We've traversed that one.
The only question I had, and it'd be good to just get it picked up, is what's happened with the balance for this year of that money?
So that will come in this year. It doesn't need to be. It's not an annual plan issue. It'll be a saving in this year's budget when and if it transfers over. When? I was just saying if it's this year, but as expected this year. So it'll be a saving for in the budget this year,
So
but
it'll
it's
go to the
not an
surplus.
issue for the annual plan.
Okay, cool. Everyone come. Andre?
Is this not making our job harder for the long-term plan when we're getting closer to a rates cap? I'm struggling to see the logic in it, the capital endowment one. Yeah. Like, I'd sooner be reducing grants than making our job even harder next year. Yeah, sure, yeah. But like, of all the years to shuffle things back to the next year, this seems like probably the worst one so far. I would have thought to be doing kinds of that. But
So what are you suggesting? Just so I've got...
well, I mean, my thinking when we had that the other day was the last thing we should be doing is a sort of a bottom line. It's not shuffling things this year to next year, because next year we're having to do a rates cap, OPEX deep dive, and everything else.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be pretty hard. And if we've made our job a little bit harder to make it better by 0.18 this year, like I'm just struggling to see the logic. If
just so I've got it. Sorry, just so I've got it clear in my mind. You're just saying we just keep it, so don't do it.
Well, we're going to regret it next year.
Yeah, no, I'm not worried. It's just more so we got something.
Well, that's my feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it in the year we have to do that, right?
So has that got lots of?
Well, yeah, I don't support that, but what? Because it's still taking money off people. It's still taking money off the public. Yeah. But if the majority is to do it, then we can. Or Aaron.
Yeah, only because I asked that last time, and will we get a briefing at some point on the urban development on how much has been spent since we started doing it 12 odd years ago, and what projects it delivered?
Yes, and
because when
again,
we talk dollar values,
yes, we will. That's outside the annual plan discussion, but we will bring and we'll get both
even if it's a short one, this was the amount spent per year.
NZ
These
to
were
come
delivered.
back with our team and do it as a joint presentation. Yep.
Okay, so urban development, we all seem comfortable. The capital endowment, do we want to? What's the feel? So can we just vote on it next?
Yeah, like we're looking at even worse rates increase already next year, and we're all setting it up to be even higher.
Tim?
It'd be good to know the effects of the Capital Endowment Fund and who benefited from it, etc. Because if we cut it or pull it back, we need to know the consequences. Because if you remember way back when RATA changed its funding, whilst they said they went out and consulted and told everyone, a lot of those groups were absolutely struck by it, blindsided by it. So I don't want us to be in that situation. So I think it'd be good to have an understanding of who benefited and etc. Because it is odd to have so much money left over. And so.
Okay, so it sounds like the general feel for the first one is to keep it in, keep it, not reduce it. So we'll go for that for next week, and then the urban development will take that. So let's go with that. And we'll note that down. Yeah. Okay. Can we move forward, please?
The next option was around the Climate Resilience Fund. You heard earlier, Council established the Climate Resilience Fund, and there's a 0.25% annual increase in rates from 25-26. We're suggesting that given the uncertainty around local government reforms, consideration should be given to pausing further rates collections for the fund until we've reformed direction is known. The reality is that boundaries may change for local government. We may be collecting a rate from people who won't benefit from the services. It would be administratively difficult to return it, so the recommendation is to pause.
I just want to talk about the administrative difficulties around the allotment of those funds. And obviously you're saying that the CRF is going to be paid for by Christchurch City ratepayers. If we go into a super city or a unitary, then those other ratepayers may benefit in 30 years' time of around $4 million. Is that what we're saying?
Or if boundaries change the other way.
We could have some of our ratepayers paying into the fund and then no longer being in Christchurch City Council, Unitary Authority, or whatever Christchurch City.
But it's it's $4 million out of the potential of hundreds in 30 years' time when we can take from it. Sort of doesn't make sense to me. It's sort of like a 5 cents to $1 sort of thing around what we need to pay back the Christchurch City ratepayer. I'm not saying go either way or other, but it sort of doesn't make sense in that regard. I did want to ask around the alternatives in terms of backfilling that CRF if, for example, we become a unitary or super city. In terms of the restructure, we don't know much yet. But how is the wider pool of funds going to look if we do go into the unitary or super city? Because we don't know that yet. Is that correct? Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
This proposal is only pausing it, isn't it? It's not stopping it. Is that right? Yeah, pausing.
And interest accrues from what it looks like in the financial years. Is that what I'm saying?
No, we would be pausing the increase. So the original Climate Resilience Fund is a 0.25% increase in rates each year.
Yep.
The initial option there is to pause the increase, so we would continue to rate at the level that we are currently rating in this 25-26 financial year. So it would avoid the rates increase. However, we would still be bringing some funding in to the Climate Resilience Fund.
But you're still forecasting that there will be an interest that is going to be building up over the 27 and 28 years.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, so it's pausing the increase. It's
pausing the increase.
Yes.
Not the fund. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Is everyone kind of generally comfortable with pausing the increase? Yeah, and you go next. And then I've got Nathaniel.
I'm not really, just for the same reason as the prior option about protecting our income. I mean, with a rates cap coming, we're looking at a perpetual freezing of incomes for the organisation, which over time will see rates get very, 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 very affordable. So I think giving ourselves a little buffer is not the end of the world. And in that cap, I mean, I actually don't think this is the best way to. I would have preferred just targeting debt as opposed to building up a fund. So I would wholeheartedly supporting getting rid of it at some stage. But sorry, I'm losing my voice. But
No,
not.
when you were saying you're getting rid of something, you can as long as you want.
I would wholeheartedly support getting rid of it in the future, but not this year, and not doing anything different.
So what about if we pause the increase?
Even
and
pausing
then
the increase.
But then, so hear me out. Pause the increase, and then get rid of it at the LTP. So that, because that picks up Andre's point, which is we're not doing that.
Yeah. I don't have the numbers. I just think we should continue to do what we were always going to do with the Climate Resilience Fund, and not pause the increase until we get rid of it. Yep.
So you're not?
And then Tim?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding was this was something that was consulted on in the last LTP. That money was collected in the last year from ratepayers on the understanding that it would be used for building a fund, to creating a long-term fund for our city that was, going to be not for us, but going to be for our children, for disasters that occur. I really think we can, at the moment, we're still able to. At the moment, we can still collect that money for that very important purpose we have, and I think we should definitely do that. And that last option there is basically debt funding rates reduction. So it's basically people in 30 years are going to be paying off a rates cut that we're giving this year, which to me seems completely absurd. So I personally, I would also be in the category of let's just keep what we agreed and what was agreed in the LTP last time, that we could just continue to build up this fund for the future because we're going to need it.
Can we, and I've got Tim and Celeste, but before that, can you just, and I don't want to put you on the spot, can you just explain, just so everyone's clear, this isn't a fund where the money is held in a fund that goes up based off equities or returns. This is an accounting ledger.
That's correct. The
So it's
funding
not
is
a true climate fund.
No.
Just so everyone's clear. Yeah.
The funding is not held in a bank account or anything like that. We note it in our general ledger on our balance sheet. We then note its nominal value, which we then calculate an interest that it is earning. It is cheaper for the council to utilise those funds to reduce the amount of borrowing that we have to undertake. So essentially the amount we save by using it as part of our working capital is greater than the interest that we would be paying into the account.
It's effectively subsidising. Yeah. Yeah. It's like a floating mortgage. Okay. Tim?
It'd be good to understand with regards to anything to do, as we're looking for different things with, climate resilience, etc., with the Port Hills and the nervousness around the community around possible fires, etc. But we're looking at everything. So what are we doing? Because if this isn't doing that, because people think that it is actually doing that, so we would be better off putting money directly to that, as in putting tanks of water along the road. Yeah. So it'd be good to explain to the public what this is doing, because it's not doing what I think a lot of people think it's meant to be doing. So yeah.
Celeste online.
Thanks, Sam. What was from memory? What was the consultation feedback on that? I think it was about 67% were in favour. Do we have any information around that?
What more information? Sorry, what other information are you wanting?
My understanding is that Councillor Donovan's asking if we can recall what the consultation feedback was in terms of percentage breakdown. And sorry, I don't know, but we could. So
yeah,
Councillor Donovan said that she thinks it's 67. But you're not certain, are you, Councillor Donovan? We can come back and advise.
No,
it's not a figure. It's not a figure to hand, but we can go look for it.
Yeah,
that'd be great, because I recall that this was one of the most popular items in that feedback, and I think it was higher than actually funding for events. So this shows that there is a lot of support there, and so I wouldn't support pausing that. I just had a point of clarification around the urban regen. Can you just go back to that slide?
You've been on. Oh, have you not been online?
I had.
Oh, we're on this. Oh no, we're not.
Yeah, sorry. So just continue the function with the existing budget. Does the existing budget? I know we'd covered this last time. Just want to make sure we've got that clear. Is that looking at up to 1.8 on top of the existing council budget?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
That's what it says. Up to.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Sam.
So the next set of savings is following an analytical review of the council budgets. So when we prepare the annual plans and LTPs, council staff carry out regular reviews of the budgets to ensure that actual results or any savings that are being materialised within the current financial year are incorporated into the upcoming budget. So we test our assumptions and ensure that they're still reasonable based on the actual information that's coming through. FY 24-25 had one of the most significant operational cash surpluses the council has seen at $47.5 million. And while we tried to incorporate as much of that as possible into the 25-26 annual plan, the full financial result was not known at that point in time. So now that we have a complete audited FY 24-25 position, we've gone through to ensure that the budgets for the upcoming annual plan are consistent with the previous results. As part of that line-by-line exercise, we have identified OPEX savings and additional revenues of $6.3 million, which can be incorporated into the annual plan. In terms of how that's incorporated, there's two key options, being a rates reduction. These savings are permanent, so that would apply a permanent rates saving. The other option is to reduce debt. By reducing debt, there would be no rate saving in the current financial year. However, over the remaining period of the LTP, the council would save $15.4 million in debt repayment and interest expense, which in the upcoming rates capping world could be applied to the core services and activities. It would also allow the council, based on our current projections, to achieve a balanced budget in year 2, which was the position in the previous annual plan, without any increase in rates in the upcoming financial year.
Okay, so do you want anyone got any questions on this? No?
So we would.
Great, so we're good with rates reduction?
I'm for the debt reduction, personally.
So I think just to bring it next week.
I think someone campaigned.
Well, unless I mean, what's the view? Do people want the rates reduction or the debt reduction? Yeah, okay, we have to vote on it next week. Yeah, not if we keep borrowing.
I think it just got skipped over. Right, I'm afraid I missed it. Sorry. Earlier we were talking about the subvention receipts, and so that was half and half, right? We were going to do. We were all half and half of the subvention receipts. Or is that something we're going to?
It's different at the end of the year, Mitch.
So the subvention receipts that you saw earlier in the presentation are the updated forecasts that we've received from our subsidiaries. So the standard approach that council has taken in the past is that subvention receipts, when they're forecast for an upcoming annual plan, are incorporated into the budget as a rates reduction, essentially like an additional dividend. If additional subvention receipts are received within the current financial year, then we bring that to council as part of our F&P report around the use of surplus, in which case the council can make a call as to whether that's applied to debt reduction or a rates reduction in the subsequent financial year.
So the current financial year subventions that are by default applied as rates reduction.
That is correct.
Is that was a policy that we agreed on as a council, or is that sort of out of our hands? Is that a decision we can give you a steer on? I guess that's what I'm asking.
You could provide a steer if we were to remove it and shift it to debt reduction. At this point, the rates would increase as a result, as they've already been applied to a rates reduction.
Yeah, well, I'll just say it because that's what we're doing here, I suppose. The steer I'd want to give is that all subvention is split 50-50, rates and debt reduction.
Cool. Good feedback. So this one feels like we need to vote on it next week, and we'll just do it formally. Potential LTP.
We also have a series of potential savings that can have additional work done or be brought back for the LTP.
So this slide is just a signal where we're looking for potential LTP savings. Some of them aren't savings, but are revenue generation, which obviously has an impact. So there's an organisation-wide review to identify revenue generation opportunities from council-owned land and buildings, which is underway. We'll come back to you with more information. There will be a full review of levels of service for the LTP. There's obviously investigation underway around unitary authority status as a strategic option for local government reform. There's a potential savings from the investment in digital transformation programme, and then there's an ongoing review of procurement consultant engagement and service delivery to identify efficiencies and most notably cost avoidance opportunities.
Aaron's got a question there.
Yeah, so just on the increasing revenues, there's some opportunities, in the inner city. How would we get them factored in? Like, there's a lot of places where we could take out some yellow lines, put back in parking, and have charged parking on those sites. So increasing the availability of parking in town, and also pushing out some of our charged areas, whether they're at the same rate or a lower rate. But, you know, it makes no sense that we're charging inside Hagley Park to stop people parking there free, but there's 2-3 blocks that you walk past that's free on street parking between town and there, and it's just for the ones that get in early enough. But they could all be.
So they'll all be coming back in the LTP in the fees and charges schedule. They'll all be reviewed for their P. Yeah.
Oh, the parking one I'd like to do, especially the one that introduces more paid parking, like just the next street over here. There's a massive yellow line down in front of PwC for just no purpose. There's no traffic. People do a massive 22k an hour down there.
We couldn't do that in time for the annual plan proposal, but we could try and do it during the annual plan year.
Yeah,
but we couldn't.
okay.
We couldn't because we've got to get it signed off in January. We couldn't have done that working plan.
No, that's good. Would that wouldn't trigger consultation anyway, would it? If we're just going to add in a whole lot of parking spaces. Yeah, because in the olden days, you could park your car up to nearly every single corner. Every street was full of parking from corner to corner, except for the 6 metres. And there was heaps. Okay.
No, Melanie. Hang on, guys. So Tyler's got a question.
I think that revenue generating one was one of my long-term plan amendments. I just wanted to ask a question around government policy and the way that we can generate revenue. Can that be included in the way and presentation that we get from staff? Because there'll be commercial opportunities, obviously, and then there's obviously local government act mandates for future long-term plan stuff. Yep, thanks.
So next up is the Christchurch Cathedral. So last year, due to the stop works on the Christchurch Cathedral, it was decided to pause the targeted rate that we had for the 25-26 annual plan. Now that pause has been carried over currently to the 26-27 annual plan that we're working on. CCRL have advised they wish to recommence works on the cathedral from 1 July 2026, so the upcoming annual plan. We still, to meet the funding requirements of the original agreement, we still need to collect around $1.8 million, which would need to be over the next 2 years if we decided to reinstate the special cathedral targeted rate. The rate was originally $6.52, including GST, which, if was to be reinstated, would increase rates by $1.12 million or 0.13%. We would appreciate your steer as to whether you would like that incorporated into this current annual plan.
Okay, I've got Andre first.
Thank you. The recommencement of works, am I correct in understanding that is dependent on them funding the current shortfall, right? which would need to be found within a
Correct.
very, very soon.
Correct.
Which would make that date an impossibility, unless funding showed up by Christmas. Like, I'm just not.
No, I know what you mean. I'm just wondering, is there a way forward that instead of having this in the, because it's so basically there's 1.8 million left to get that to where it needs to be. Is that what you're saying? Could we not just at the end of June just use some of the surplus, the at 30 June, rather than having it in the annual plan? Because then we're not putting it back in another targeted rate. We're just going, but the legal advice, we don't have an option.
So you're
We've
saying
got to fund it.
rather than do a direct or targeted rate for it, just use surplus of ratepayer funding. Money unspent.
Yeah, it's just like an easy, because it's got to be topped up, and it just effectively would become an accounting thing at the end of the year. I think then it avoids the annual plan. We don't want to dominate the annual plan with the cathedral, when we have legal obligations that we have to fund. That we don't have an option. Like legally, we do not have an option. So yeah.
Why don't we, because we don't have sufficient information, we'll come back with some information.
Yeah.
We either in time for the annual plan if it needs to be done in the annual plan, but otherwise later. It could be in the new year for the annual plan.
Cool. Okay, Pauline.
I agree with that. I think where Andre was coming from was the timing for this. Does it have to be in this year? Could we spread it over a couple of years?
Yeah.
Even three?
That will come back in the information.
Yeah. Okay, cool. What do we got next? Next steps.
Okay, thanks guys. Right, we're in the wind-up now. Look, this has been very much a dry run for next week's F&P. I think we have a good steer on most things. There's a few items to go up for debate next week. So, tomorrow we finish the report for F&P. There's the revaluation workshop, which may have a bearing on some matters. 17th, we have the Finance and Performance Committee, but it's where those issues that you need to vote on, we'll need clarification there so we can go away and build the thing over the break. As discussed in the past, at the end of January, there's another free range day. It's not for the annual plan, it's to consider the letter of expectation for the LTP, because we are looking to start the LTP process more or less as soon as the annual plan's out the door. So free range day, 29th of January for the letter of expectation. ARMC goes through their oversight of the annual plan. 10th of February, all things being equal, all things in a fair breeze, we adopt a draft annual plan based on your feedback from next week's F&P. In answer to Councillor Donovan's question earlier, the support was 59% in support, 27 opposed and 14 didn't know. This was about the Climate Fund. 59 in support, 27 opposed, 14 didn't know. So, look, that's, unless there are any questions, that's the process that gets us to a draft annual plan.
Are there any questions on this? So really there'll be a few things that we need to work through next week, and then we'll go from there. Cool.
Thanks, everyone.
You happy? Thank you. That's great. We're all closed up. Done.